name the components of formed elements in the blood. Mention one major function of each of them. So students, here in this question, we need to learn the components of formed elements present in the blood and its function. So blood is a fluid connective tissue, and we know that a connective tissue consists of two parts. One is the matrix, the other is the cells. So when we centrifuge a blood, that is, centrifugation helps to separate the components of the blood based on its weight. Now here is a centrifuged blood. Now this portion, which is fluid in nature, slightly yellowish in color, it is called plasma. It's the liquid portion of the blood. And below this, there is red color layer and a white layer. Now this red layer represents the heaviest part of the blood, which gets settled down at the bottom. They are erythrocytes, nothing but RBC cells. And upon that there is a slight whitish layer, and this layer represents the WBC cells and platelets. It contains WBC cells and platelets. Now all these three together, WBC, platelets and erythrocytes, forms the formed element. They are the cells present in the blood. So now let's learn what are the components. Now what are these WBC, platelet and erythrocytes and its function. Now coming to the word erythrocytes, here erythros represents red color and cytes represents it is a cell. Cells which are red in color, they are called erythrocytes, and they are also called as red blood cells or RBC. We can call them red blood cells or RBC. It's the another name. If you take the number of cells, RBCs are the most abundant cells present in the blood. Now when compared to WBC, platelets and erythrocytes, RBC is the most abundant number of cells present in the blood. And to impart this red color, so here we can see the cells are red in color. Now the protein responsible for this red color is hemoglobin. So heme stands for iron and globin stands for protein. So it is a protein with iron. So this imparts red color to the RBC cells. The major function of this hemoglobin is to carry oxygen. Now when we respire, we take in the oxygen in the lungs. From here the oxygen should be carried to all the cells present in the various parts of the body, and to transport oxygen using RBC cells or red blood cells. These red blood cells are produced in the bone marrows and in the ribs. They are found in the bone marrows of long bones, and they are also produced in the ribs. So normally the number of this RBC should be around 4 to 6 million per cubic millimeter of blood. So its normal count should be around 4 to 6 million per cubic millimeter of blood. So the next component is WBC. They are also called as leukocytes. So leuko stands for colorless and cytes represent cell. So they are also called as white blood cells, commonly called as white blood cells. So they are colorless in nature, and these cells, they are colorless because they do not contain hemoglobin. So when hemoglobin is present, it will be red in color. Now WBC cells, they do not contain hemoglobin, so they are colorless in nature. They are the largest cells of the body and are divided into two main categories. So generally, WBC is divided into two main categories based on the cytoplasm. Now here, so if you see these three cells, the cytoplasm contains dot-like structures within it. If the cells have granules in the cytoplasm, they are called granulocytes. Here if you observe, the cells, they do not contain any granules in it. The cytoplasm is clear. So they are called agranulocytes. So these are called agranulocytes. Further, WBC is classified into two types based on the presence or absence of granules. If granules are present, they are called granulocytes. If they are absent, they are called agranulocytes. So here we can see the component of blood. So RBC, it is most abundant, 44%. And white blood cells and platelets together form 1%. The remaining part is plasma. So if we consider the formed elements, RBC is the most abundant over here. Now let's learn what are the functions of granulocytes. So granulocytes means they have granules in the cytoplasm. So 3 different types of cells are present in granulocytes: basophil, eosinophil and neutrophil. So these granules present in the cytoplasm. In all the 3 granulocytes, that is basophil, eosinophil, neutrophil, granules are present. Now the function of neutrophil is they are phagocytic in nature. So phagocytic cells are those which can engulf a solid substances like a foreign pathogen. When a foreign substances enter inside the cell, the neutrophil, it is amoeboid shape, they engulf the foreign substances and it starts digesting it, and hence they protect our body. So similarly, eosinophil, it is also granulated. They have got granules in the cytoplasm. These are associated with allergic reactions. So when a foreign substances enter into a body and an inflammation takes place, these chemicals or granules which is present in the cytoplasm of eosinophils are released and it reacts with the pathogen and allergic reaction takes place. So eosinophils release the granules when a foreign substances enter, whereas basophils are involved in inflammatory responses. So whenever injury takes place or a pathogen enters inside the body, inflammation occurs. During inflammation, there will be swelling, there will be increase in WBC cells at the point of injury. Due to accumulation of extra blood, that region becomes red in color, it becomes swollen, and all the pathogens which are present in that area will be killed by the basophil cells. So this response is called inflammatory response. So altogether, granulocytes, that is basophil, eosinophil and neutrophil, they protect our body from a foreign invaders. So now we completed studying about granulocytes and they help us to protect from the foreign invaders. Now the next type of cells in WBC are agranulocytes. So here the cytoplasm of these cells, they are clear. They do not have any granules or any chemicals in the cytoplasm. So we call them as agranulocytes. So totally there are 3 different types of agranulocytes. The largest one is monocyte and other 2 cells are called lymphocytes, B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. Now the term B represents to the place where these cells gets matured. B is for bone, these cells get matured in the bone, and T stands for thymus. Now T lymphocytes, they mature in the thymus, so we call it as T lymphocytes, and B lymphocytes, they mature in the bone, so it is represented by the term B. Now monocytes, let us learn what is the function of a monocyte. So monocytes, they are phagocytic in nature. Phagocytic in the sense, like neutrophils, these cells can engulf a foreign substance, whether it can be a bacteria or a foreign protein or anything which does not belong to our body. So such cells will be engulfed by the monocytes and they will be digested and it will be broken into pieces and it will be killed. Now this process of engulfing a solid substances and killing is called phagocytic. So monocytes help in phagocytosis. Now the other 2 agranulocytes are B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. So the lymphocytes generally they generate an immune response against infecting agents. B lymphocytes, they produce antibodies. Now these antibodies recognizes a foreign substances, they bind to the foreign substances and present this foreign substances to a cell called T lymphocytes. T lymphocytes further kills these foreign substances by making many pores on the plasma membrane, and when it makes many pores on the plasma membrane, more of water and other substance enter into the cell and the cell will finally rupture. So B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes, they fight against the foreign substances and they generate an immune response. When an immune response is generated, an individual will be able to resist the disease. So these are the most important cells in our body. So WBC cells, granulocytes and agranulocytes, they help us to protect from the foreign substances, and that is why we call them as the soldiers of our body. So the next type of formed elements is platelets. So platelets are proteins or small irregular bodies present in the body. They contain essential chemicals that helps in clotting. Whenever an injury occurs, when there is a wound, the blood starts bleeding. So if this bleeding does not stop, it leads to a fatal condition and a person might die. So this generally does not happen because the blood contains an inactive protein called platelets. They're irregular bodies present in the blood. On injury, these platelets get activated and they help in clotting. They clot, they form a clot and it blocks the bleeding or flowing of the blood outside the body. So the main function of platelets is to promote clotting. Now totally we learnt the components of the formed elements. Formed elements include three components. The first one is the erythrocytes, the most abundant cells in the blood, that is RBC. They carry oxygen to the various parts of the body. And the next one is WBC. So WBC are classified further into granulocytes and agranulocytes based on the granules present in the cytoplasm. Granulocytes includes neutrophil, eosinophil and basophil. And agranulocytes includes monocytes, lymphocytes, that is B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. All the WBC cells helps to protect our body from foreign invaders. And similarly, platelets are a components of formed elements. They help in clotting mechanism. So they prevent bleeding of the blood. So they promote clotting. So these are the components of formed elements and its functions.